Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. The institution of marriage has been with us at least as long as the time that historians and archaeologists are able to trace recordings of human interaction. In fact, there is little question that it goes back long before the invention of writing. We don't know exactly what legal or ritual system those prehistoric people had to sanctify a union of a man and a woman, but there's no doubt that there was such a thing. It is probably one of the longest running and universal social practices in all of human history. The word sanctify is not used for just any old social custom. It is not always used to describe marriage, but it is certainly not rare to find marriage described as such. If done properly and with sincere devotion and intention, it is nothing less than holy. It may not have always had the familiar depiction of everlasting love, but it certainly entailed some sense of togetherness and sharing responsibilities. It always included an understood goal of having children and raising a family, however that was accomplished in the countless ways marriage has taken form. It is about as blessed a deep human relationship as can be. Of course, it hasn't always worked. While in the past divorce wasn't the common experience of today, that doesn't mean that all marriages were made in heaven. There were conflicts of every imaginable variety, to say nothing of violence, murder, and abuse. Like any obligation of this sort, cheating was frequently lurking on the horizon. Historically, marriage has been far from perfect. In recent years, marriage has taken a major turn for the worse in the eyes of people all over the world. Originally, this was a strictly Western phenomenon, but it is now found in all parts of the world. There are serious doubts that the institution will survive into the 22nd century. Whatever its fate, it almost certainly will not be like what it has been for almost all of human history. If this indeed happens, it will represent an enormous shift in personal goals and aspirations. This week's Parsha is called Bereshit, which means in the beginning. It would be difficult to find a more influential word or phrase in all of human literature. This Parsha, the first in the Torah, includes the creation story and the stories of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. It goes from there to trace the various ancestral lines until Noah and the great flood. It includes such foundational lines as "Let us make man" and "Am I my brother's keeper?" It has the trees of knowledge and life, the snake in the Garden of Eden, and God resting on the seventh day of creation. Whether we buy into all this or not, this Parsha has to rank at or near the top of human notions about themselves and their world. Among those famous lines is one found right in the middle of the Garden of Eden story, which actually takes 2 chapters in the standard text. Towards the end of the first chapter, we find the narrative of the creation of the woman. She didn't have the name Eve at this point, so we'll just have to refer to her as the woman. This little story is fascinating, either read as a literal account or as a metaphorical description of what was actually happening. It cuts to the core of the human personality, of relationships, of sex, and of marriage. Quote, God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I shall make for him a companion." God formed from the ground all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the sky, and he brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living thing, that was its name. The man called names to all the animals and the birds of the sky and all the beasts of the field. And the man did not find a companion for himself. God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and he slept. And he took one of his sides and closed the flesh underneath it. God built the side that he took from the man into a woman, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "This time is bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh. This shall be called woman, for she was taken from man. Thus a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. The two of them were naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed." We have to look a little closer at these verses. Let's begin with, "It is not good for man to be alone." This statement is utterly remarkable for its simplicity and for its complexity. What could be simpler? We need companionship, we need friendship, we need to love and to be loved. By the same token, what could be more complex than the give and take of a friendship or the ups and downs of a loving relationship? It is difficult to know when this profound thought first arises in the human mind, but it hits all of us at one time or another. We sense that we need someone else to be there with us, fighting our battles along with us, and holding our hand when we crave reassurance. This realization is perhaps the most important insight that a human being gains in the course of a lifetime. It is not good to be alone. When God expressed this realization on behalf of the man, the first remedy he experimented with was to form the animals into potential companions for human beings. Nobody can deny the success of animal domestication as a source for food, clothing, and labor. In addition, animals can be a wonderful source of companionship, as any pet owner can testify. What an animal cannot be is an equal. No matter how much you love that dog or that horse, it is not a human being. It may give its life for you, but you won't give your life for it. The solution for the problem of being alone could not be solved by a mere helper. It also had to be an equal. The Genesis metaphor of the man falling asleep and losing one of his sides is one of the most poignant in all Scripture. We have to lose something if we truly want to not be alone. Something has to be sacrificed, to be taken, if we wish to gain the priceless gift of a true companion. Part of this sacrifice can be made openly in the fully conscious state. But there is always a part of it that must be taken subconsciously. We are not even fully aware of what we are giving up to gain a dear friend or a loving spouse. Perhaps it is better that way. If we were fully aware of this sacrifice, we might be hopelessly reluctant to make it. But sacrifice it is. It is a piece of our very selves that must be taken if we truly hope to gain the love and trust of another. When the man realizes that only the woman can solve his problem of aloneness because she possesses a piece of him, it becomes almost axiomatic that he will leave everything to join with her. His parents, as wonderful as they were and with as much as they gave him, cannot fulfill this hole in his life. Leaving them to fuse with her is the most natural thing in the world. The Torah's description of the physical act of coupling, of sexual union, is nothing short of breathtaking. And the two of them were naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. Sex is physical and lustful. It is frequently selfish and even violent. All too often, it descends to the level of pornography. But it is also beautiful and unique in the way that two people can truly become one. When sex is given and received as an expression of love and devotion, there is no shame. For two people who truly love each other, sharing nakedness is a gift from God. But at the end of the day, no matter how happily married people may be, no matter how many loving children, devoted friends, or admiring peers one may have, we are still alone. The thoughts in the mind are accessible solely to the one who thinks them. The deep emotions, the love and the hatred, the jealousy and the admiration, the pride and the humility may show on the outside, but they positively flame on the inside. The imagination roars out in brilliant colors and shapes, but it is unimaginable to any but the one who experiences it. Most of all, the energy of the will can only be driven and used by the one who generates it. How could man not be called alone when he is so utterly and hopelessly alone? We may fool ourselves to think that we aren't alone with companionship and social busyness. We may have hundreds of friends out there in cyberspace contacting us through all manner of digital interaction. But that only reinforces the feeling of aloneness. It's all through the interface. What is the answer to this existential dilemma? We agree with God's observation that it isn't good to be alone, but we don't know a way out. The Torah's answer is the way that God gave us to deal with the destiny that was too difficult to fulfill. God didn't abandon us. God is still there guiding us, showing us a way to bear the burden. In this crucial aspect, in the battle of aloneness, God told us to find a companion who wants nothing more than to be there, sharing the burden, and in doing so, removing some of the loneliness. To be the bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, to cling to each other in moments of pain and joy, to be one flesh, naked and yet not embarrassed, is to be together. Anybody who has lived with this blessing knows that it is not merely a biological necessity that evolution has somehow programmed into our survival program. It is truly a gift from God. I have been presenting this class for about a year and a half, and I don't believe that I've said anything really personal other than my name. I am about to break that tradition. Shortly before I was asked to begin presenting this series of classes, Suri, my wife of 35 years, died of breast cancer. I have to say that I don't think I ever truly understood loneliness until she died. I still carry that loneliness with me. I don't experience it constantly, but it does hit me every day. I believe the reason it continues to affect me so much is that I, for reasons I cannot fathom, was granted this gift. I knew what it meant to have someone who, in her own inimitable way, was able to help me pierce my own veil of aloneness. She taught me through her love and her companionship how to truly be together with another person. It is not good for man to be alone, but we are alone. The Torah's answer to this dilemma is to find another person who is equally alone and to share that burden. That is what marriage is all about, at least in its most sublime form. For those who have experienced this, it is heaven on earth. I wish to dedicate this class to Suri, who taught me everything that I have presented here. She is still with me, proving to me time and again that God has given us a means to solve the dilemma of aloneness. We are not alone. Shabbat Shalom.